He said it right there, mid-meeting, in front of the whole dispatch team. Average, no build-up, no context. Just slapped it out there like he was reading off a coffee order. I didn't blink. I didn't shift. I just nodded and smiled, the kind of smile that makes people stop talking. My name's Alan. I'm 42 years old. I live in Riverside, California. For 14 years, I've been the lead dispatcher at a private ambulance company running contract response for 3 major hospitals in SoCal. I kept us under response time limits for over a decade. No lawsuits, no missed contracts, no dead air. 14 years of that. And this kid, new director, slick haircut, shiny dress shoes, shows up on Monday, and by Thursday, I'm apparently average. Before we go on, tell me something. Where are you listening from right now? Quick note, this was his first official team briefing. He hadn't even shaken my hand yet, didn't introduce himself when he walked in. Just started talking like we were interns on his 3rd startup. He stood in front of the whiteboard, clicking through slides like he was demoing a new app. Redundancy and verification workflows, non-optimized unit rotation, unclear escalation protocols. None of that meant anything to the actual work, but he loved the sound of it. Then he turned, clicked to a slide marked Current Dispatch Performance, and said, "We're running average numbers here. That's going to change." That's when heads started to turn toward me. I didn't flinch, just leaned back in my chair and kept watching. He pointed at a bar graph I'd submitted the week before. "We'll be streamlining some of these outdated procedures, cutting down response times, cleaning out redundant protocols." Redundant protocols. That's corporate talk for gutting safety checks. I could feel the team shifting. I'd trained most of them myself. They knew what those checks were there for. He kept going. "You'll get new call scripts by Monday. We're simplifying dispatch flow. Less wasted time." I raised my hand. He looked annoyed, like I just sneezed during his wedding vows. "Alan, right?" I nodded. "You're removing the 3-point verification?" "Among other things. It's inefficient." I said nothing. He moved on. By the end of the meeting, he'd rolled out 5 changes that would wreck our call flow within a month. Nobody said a word, and I didn't argue. I just sat there smiling, mentally tracking the exact minute this whole thing would start breaking. By Monday morning, the new call scripts were live. The old 3-point verification, gone. Location confirmations, slashed to 1 line. Response tracking? Auto-logged now, which really meant ignored unless someone remembered. The guy even removed the part where dispatchers had to confirm crew arrival to the scene. I sat through the rollout meeting watching him pass out laminated one-pagers like he was handing out coupons. No protocol flowcharts, no Q&A, just, "This is the new standard, folks." Nobody asked questions. I didn't either. I just waited. 2 days later, I brought it up in a follow-up meeting with the ops leads. Cutting these steps might save 10 seconds per call, but it's going to add minutes on the back end when things get missed. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "You're still thinking like a dispatcher, Alan." "I am a dispatcher." He smiled like I'd proven his point. Second meeting, I tried again. "You're removing coverage checks on zone handoffs. That's how we lost a truck in San Dimas 2 years ago." He chuckled. "You really are too attached to paperwork." That was it. End of conversation. By Friday, my calendar was empty. The recurring strategy calls, gone. Weekly project syncs, canceled. I wasn't CC'd on anything new. No announcement, no HR memo. Just slowly pushed to the side like I'd retired without telling anyone. Fine. I stopped showing up to the glass-walled war room where he held court with his clicky keyboard and buzzwords. Instead, I spent the time doing what I do best, tracking what no one else was watching. I built a dashboard. Not a fancy technical one either. This was plain English, color-coded, 0 training needed. Call received, unit dispatched, time to arrival, call closed, green if we met the mark, yellow if we slipped, red if we blew it. It updated every 60 seconds off a clean data scrape. No macros, no code, just real-time transparency. I kept it off the company radar, saved locally, locked down. It wasn't about proving anything yet. I just wanted to see with my own eyes how fast his shortcuts would tear holes in the system. And sure enough, the cracks started. One overnight shift, a call to Rancho Cucamonga didn't dispatch for 6 minutes. The on-call driver said nobody pinged him. The record showed it as cleared in progress. That was a lie. I logged it. Next day, a transfer call got tagged incomplete because nobody confirmed the pickup. The hospital called back 2 hours later, asking if the patient was still waiting. I logged that too. A misrouted call in Fullerton, a duplicate dispatch in Moreno Valley, a gap in unit coverage between 3 and 5 a.m. that left 2 zones dark. All of it, dates, times, affected patients, missed steps, noted. He didn't notice any of it. He was too busy throwing out graphs about reduced average turnaround and record dispatch speed. Because yeah, if you stop checking anything, it does look faster, right up until someone dies. He kept sending progress emails to the executive team, bragging about how his streamlined flow was pushing us into top percentile benchmarks. I saw the slide deck. He was presenting it at some quarterly leadership call. Meanwhile, the real numbers, the stuff that mattered, were flashing yellow and red across my screen like hazard lights. I didn't say a word, didn't correct him, didn't tap anyone on the shoulder. I just watched. Every missed call, every delayed arrival, every unverified handoff, it all added up. And while he strutted around quoting metrics he didn't even understand, I sat at my desk, quietly building a record that would speak for itself when the time came. By the start of the next week, the edges were already fraying. Monday morning, I watched a call to Anaheim sit unassigned for 4 full minutes. Dispatcher flagged it, no units available. That wasn't true. I knew 2 were floating in the area. The new flow just didn't prompt the coverage check. Call ended up backlogged and reassigned. Delay, 9 minutes. I logged it. Tuesday, a transport unit out of East LA got rerouted mid-call, leaving the original patient stranded in the hallway of a dialysis center for over an hour. The handoff box had been removed from the script. Nobody confirmed drop-off. Delay, 68 minutes, logged. Wednesday, the system labeled 4 calls resolved, without dispatch ever assigning a unit. I checked the logs twice. No vehicles ever moved. One was a shortness of breath call. The others were post-op transfers, no paperwork, no signatures. Just disappeared. By Thursday, the dashboard looked like a sick Christmas tree. Scattered green, thick patches of yellow, and one solid red streak running down the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift line. The overnight crew was drowning. And still, nobody said a word. I watched him walk into the bullpen that afternoon, clapping some junior ops analyst on the back, saying things like, "We're on fire this week," and "This is the pace we need to scale." His shoes clicked like punctuation marks on polished concrete. Meanwhile, the truth was right there, time-stamped, color-coded, and bleeding all over my screen. But upstairs, the chatter was all positive. Someone said they heard the VP of operations like the reform momentum. Another said the hospital hadn't raised any red flags. Faster is better, they kept repeating. I knew better. Silence didn't mean success. It just meant no one was paying attention. Yet, late Friday, I got the email. Subject, HR meeting, Friday 4 p.m., no context. Just a calendar invite. I showed up on time. Room 3B. Neutral walls, fake plant in the corner, blinds half drawn. The HR manager, Diane, nice enough woman, sat with a folder already open. The director was sitting beside her, legs crossed, phone on the table like he was waiting for lunch to arrive. She started with the usual corporate script. Due to internal restructuring and a shift in operational strategy, I tuned it out after the second sentence. My eyes were on him. He looked straight at me, smiling just slightly. Not gloating, just smug. Like the ending had already been printed. When Diane paused, he spoke. "Alan, we appreciate your time here, but honestly, your performance hasn't evolved. You've remained average, and the company is moving in a different direction." "Got it," I said. No emotion, no raise in tone. Just a clear, flat reply. He expected a reaction, maybe a rant, maybe some tears. All he got was my signature on the severance packet and a slow, deliberate nod. "Anything you'd like to add?" Diane asked. I looked her in the eyes, shook my head once, and stood up. I didn't shake his hand. I didn't even look at him again. Walked out with the papers in one hand and something else forming in my mind. Sharp, simple, specific. I had the dashboard. I had the data. I had 14 years of knowing exactly how this system worked. And now, I had 0 obligations and nothing left to lose. Before I shut my system down for the last time, I dragged one file into the company's shared employee server. Not hidden, not renamed. Just livedispatchmetrics.xlsx, sitting right there next to the weekly lunch schedules and PTO request forms. No password, no encryption. open to anyone who cared enough to click. That dashboard wasn't revenge. I wasn't interested in payback. It was truth. Stripped of spin, dressed in colors and timestamps, I logged off, turned in my badge, dropped my company phone at the front desk, and walked out the front door without a word. Didn't look back. That night, I poured myself a drink and opened the dashboard from home. It was still live, auto-updating every 60 seconds, mostly green that first night. But I knew better than to trust day one data. By the end of day two, one yellow bar showed up, a missed coverage window in Riverside between 2:10 and 2:50 a.m. Nothing dramatic, just a small slip, a familiar signal to anyone who understood how bad days begin. By day three, yellow was creeping. The night shift had 2 delayed dispatches, 1 confirmed call drop. The map on the side, coded by zone, had a faint haze over Pomona and East LA. Day 5, I saw it. Solid red from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. No ambulance arrived on scene under 8 minutes. One call breached 22. Nobody had changed anything. No new protocols, no reverts, no rollbacks. They were still following his reforms like gospel. And now the numbers were starting to rot. I didn't share the link, didn't post it anywhere, didn't need to. Someone would find it. Someone always does. The thing about dispatchers is they notice patterns. They dig. They look twice. Some rookie working an overnight would click the wrong folder and open it by mistake. Or some supervisor would spot the file name and open it out of curiosity. Word would spread. And when they saw it, when they saw their own shift lit up in red with their own call IDs listed down the side, it wouldn't feel like an old tool. It would feel like a mirror. I checked the file once or twice a week. Not obsessively, just enough to stay informed. Watching it was like watching rust eat through steel. Slow at first, barely visible, but persistent. Week 2, red started showing up on weekend day shifts. That was new. Normally, weekends were light, but with staff cuts and no backup protocols, it made sense. Week 3, the lag between call received and unit assigned widened. You could see the time gaps stretching out in the logs. Green shrank, yellow swelled, red settled in. And the beautiful part? I didn't touch a thing. I didn't lift a finger. The system was doing exactly what it had been built to do. Track truth. Quietly, passively, relentlessly. Let them talk about average. Let them chase faster call times and prettier graphs. Let him pat himself on the back in leadership meetings. The seed was planted, and it was growing. It started with a text from Rachel, one of the few dispatchers I still trusted. Lunch this week? Got updates. We met at a cheap taco spot near the old office. She slid into the booth across from me, pulled the paper napkin out of her drink cup, and set it straight. They're asking questions now, the hospital's noticing the delays. I leaned in. Which hospital? St. Andrews first, then Long Beach General. Nothing formal yet, but they've been calling the floor supervisors more, asking for exact timestamps, stuff they never used to care about. I nodded. Means they're tracking their own gaps now. Rachel shrugged. They don't trust what they're hearing. He's still feeding them the same crap. Record speeds, cleaner call flow. But patients are waiting longer, and families are calling in. I didn't say much, just tore off a piece of tortilla and let her talk. He's blaming the staff, she said, shaking her head. Told the team last week it's a discipline breakdown and that he's pushing a new rotation model. There it was. I'd seen that coming from a mile away. When leadership has no idea what they broke, they blame the people holding the pieces. The new update went live that weekend, an automatic unit rotation optimizer that was supposed to spread coverage more evenly across the map. What it actually did was jam up the dispatch queue for almost an hour. 2 emergency calls, one in Southgate, the other in Whittier, got routed to the wrong zones. The receiving units were 15 minutes out, minimum. Meanwhile, closer ambulances were marked not eligible due to the new rotation filter. The system lag lasted 44 minutes. I had the logs pulled before midnight. One of the calls was a chest pain. The other was a pedestrian hit by a car. I highlighted both incidents in the dashboard and updated the map section. The red showed up before I finished my second coffee. That week, the whispers got louder. Rachel texted again. People are using it now. Your file, that dashboard I asked how. They're not saying it out loud, she replied. But I've seen it open on a couple screens, especially after shifts when stuff goes sideways. They're checking it before the director's numbers come out. I smiled at that. Quietly, the guy was still hosting his Monday meetings with big energy, still tossing out words like uptime and dispatch agility. But under the surface, people weren't listening to him anymore. They were watching something else, a color-coded spreadsheet. Every day, the dashboard looked worse. Whole blocks of yellow turned red. Overnight shifts were disasters. Gaps in weekend coverage turned into hours with no confirmed unit activity. The green boxes, what few were left, looked like leftovers from a different company. I didn't promote the tool, never mentioned it publicly, didn't need to. It had momentum now, not because of me, but because it told the truth that everyone else was too afraid to say out loud. Rachel told me one night, I heard someone from finance asked where the file came from. I paused. What did they say? Just said it was in the shared folder. No one claimed it. Good. Let the file stay anonymous. Let the numbers speak in silence. The less they knew about me, the more they'd trust the data. Because at this point, no one trusted him. Rachel sent me another message 2 days later. It's not whispers anymore. The hospital's going over his head. They'd started emailing company executives directly. No middlemen, no pleasantries. Just subject lines like escalated concern, critical delay, and unacceptable response times, immediate review required. The dispatch floor was stretched thin, people covering double zones, sitting 2 screens deep in open calls. Crews on the road were flying blind. No check-ins, no confirmations, no updates between legs. And upstairs, the guy was still pumping out stiff emails like it was a minor software hiccup. One of them leaked. He wrote, "We've identified a few isolated queue irregularities, which are being addressed with targeted procedural fixes." Isolated, huh? I had 5 separate zones showing red across 3 days straight. On the dashboard, East LA was black for almost an hour Wednesday morning. Not red, black. No data. No movement. That meant nothing got logged. Calls were either routed out or just dropped. The company's response time contract required 90% of emergency calls to hit scene within 8 minutes. That day, they hit 65%. Rachel told me the crews were pissed, overworked, burned out. One medic threatened to walk mid-shift when dispatch failed to confirm a backup for a code 3 run. Said he wasn't driving blind with someone coding in the back. Can't blame him. The tool, my dashboard, was being passed around more now. Not formally. Just word of mouth, text messages, USBs. Someone printed a color screenshot and pinned it to the break room corkboard. It lasted about an hour before management tore it down. Didn't matter. By then, everyone had seen it. Red was crawling. The worst part? The director saw it. Someone finally forwarded him the file. I know because Rachel told me what he said in the leadership stand-up. This is old junk from Alan's era. That stuff was half-baked when he was here. They laughed. He moved on. But even the ops analyst he brushed off looked uncomfortable. Because whatever he wanted to believe, that junk was running live. Every 60 seconds, every drop, every breach. And the clients, they weren't laughing. Rachel forwarded me a screenshot of an internal message from one of the hospital liaisons. It just said, "We've begun reviewing alternative vendor options. Let us know if there's a compelling reason to wait." That's the kind of tone you only get when they've already had 3 other meetings without you. Meanwhile, he was still throwing duct tape at the dam. Rushed out another policy memo about unit accountability, which translated to, blame the crew if a call's late. People stopped reading after the first paragraph. The cracks weren't hidden anymore. They were daily, visible, and impossible to spin. I watched the dashboard from home. The zones pulsed in patterns now. Green, yellow, red, black. Whole days with nothing but red from noon to 6. Critical windows gone. Every time I checked it, it looked worse. And I knew sooner or later, someone higher up was going to stop reading his emails. They were going to start looking at the numbers. By the following Monday, it was no longer internal. Rachel forwarded me the email chain. Subject line, urgent safety incident, critical response failure. Straight from the hospital's admin director to the company's C-suite, not routed through any middle manager. The message was short, no pleasantries, no corporate padding. Just a timestamp, a call ID, and one sentence that changed the tone completely. A patient was left waiting 28 minutes for transport. They coded before arrival. No excuses, no isolated incident spin. Just a bullet. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. I already knew what came next. By Tuesday, another former coworker, Eric, called me from the parking lot outside the building. "They're losing it," he said. Internal meetings have gone full-blown DEFCON. The director's on every call with that tight-jawed look like someone canceled his bonus. What's he saying? That it's a perception problem. He literally said, "We're battling a narrative, not a failure." I laughed into my coffee. Eric wasn't done. They got legal on standby. Risk is trying to figure out what the hospital's next move is. Everyone's pointing fingers at ops. Dispatchers are keeping copies of their shift logs now. They don't want to get thrown under the bus. He paused. By the way, someone opened your file in the executive war room. My back straightened. Who? Senior Ops Manager, Chuck Norrington. I hadn't thought about Chuck in months. Ex-military, no bull guy. Never said much in meetings, but when he did, people shut up and listened. Eric went on. He clicked the dashboard file right in front of everyone, just opened it from the shared drive. Didn't say a word. My heart thumped once. Then what? Nothing. He just left it open, full screen, plugged into the conference monitor, walked out. I pictured it. That big projector in conference room C. Walls dimmed, chairs lined up like pews. Just rows of executives staring at red, yellow, and black blocks with call IDs and delay timestamps running down the side. No sound, no spin. Just the data, flashing out every lie that had been shoved down their throats for the last 2 months. I knew Chuck. That move wasn't an accident. That was surgical. Later that day, Rachel messaged again. They're asking who built it. I didn't answer. Let them ask. Let them trace the file history, open the properties, see the author tag. Let them sit with the fact that the one person they dismissed as average was the only one who'd seen this coming in real time. I wasn't hiding, but I wasn't stepping in either. I didn't need to. The numbers were louder than anything I could say. That dashboard wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And now it was center stage. Reports were circulating. Meetings ran late. Slack channels went quiet. No one was joking around anymore. Nobody was saying isolated glitches. The air changed. That's how collapse happens. Not in a single moment, but in a slow accumulation of ignored warnings. Until finally, it all lands at once. I opened the file again that night. Watched the map flicker. Long Beach, red. Pasadena, red. Pomona, offline. Calls delayed, units out of rotation. Coverage gaps wider than ever. And that dashboard, the one they called junk, was now the only thing in the building telling the truth. By the end of the week, they held the quarterly review. That meeting was always run tight. CEO at the head, VPs on either side, and everyone else seated in silence with notebooks they'd never open. But this time, the hospital contract was the only thing on the agenda. Top bullet, bolded, highlighted. The director walked in like nothing was wrong. New suit, fresh haircut. He brought a deck, slick PowerPoint with gradient graphs and hollow talking points, cherry-picked metrics stacked in his favor. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. I knew how he'd open. Some over-rehearsed line like, "We're seeing exciting progress in core response metrics." He always led with progress, always tried to control the first 5 minutes. He made it 6 minutes in. That's when the CEO interrupted. One hand raised, calm voice, nothing dramatic. "Can we see the current live dispatch data?" Silence. According to Rachel, who heard it from someone in finance, the room stalled for half a beat. The director froze just slightly, barely visible unless you were looking for it. He cleared his throat. "I can get those metrics post-meeting. I've got a clean summary right here and—" "No," the CEO cut in. "Live. Real time. What the hospitals are seeing now. Someone from IT, probably the same guy who handled room AV, tapped the shared folder on the overhead screen. Live dispatch metrics.xlsx, one click. The room went dead quiet. Up came the sheet, full screen. No filters, just raw visibility. Red across the board, week after week of breach-level delays. Whole zones marked in black, 0 coverage hours. Rows of time-to-arrival stats pushing 10, 12, 15 minutes. Every line with a call ID, a zone, a delay. No commentary, no explanation. Just color-coded failure. Nobody spoke. The director tried to move, maybe switch back to his slide deck, maybe scroll away. But the CEO raised a hand again. "Leave it up." He leaned forward. "Is this what the hospital's been seeing for the last month?" No answer. The ops VP shifted in her chair. Legal guy looked down at his tablet. Someone else tapped a pen, once, then stopped. Director finally found his voice. That file's unofficial. It's not company approved and it's missing context. Most of those data pulls weren't properly scrubbed, so what you're seeing there is a distorted snapshot of the CEO didn't even blink. Is it live or not? He hesitated. It updates live, yes, but again, the underlying sources. So, if a hospital logged in right now, the CEO cut in, this is what they'd see? Another beat of silence. Yes, he said finally. The room didn't move. He tried again, voice thinner now. This isn't the system we use for performance reporting. It was created under a previous team member. I believe he shared it without approval, and does it reflect actual dispatch delays? The director swallowed. Some, but it doesn't factor in all the operational variables or external factors like hospital handoffs, and the CEO stood up. That was the end of the conversation. He didn't shout, didn't slam the table, just stood. And no one had to guess what that meant. The deck was forgotten. The director sat down slowly, lips pressed tight, trying not to show how hard he was clenching his jaw. Meanwhile, the file kept refreshing. Every 60 seconds, a new line blinked in. He tried to recover, stumbled into phrases like implementation gaps and operational turbulence. Like that would rewrite the map bleeding red behind him. Nobody bought it. Legal didn't move. Ops just stared forward. It guy leaned back like he'd seen enough. The CEO stood the whole time, hands behind his back, eyes locked on the boardroom monitor like it was a witness. No one interrupted. No one defended him. The director's voice got smaller with each sentence, like even he didn't believe what he was saying anymore. Eventually, the room stopped listening. Rachel texted me 15 minutes later. It's done. He's out. Packets already printed. Across town, I was pouring coffee. Same countertop, same mug I'd used the day after I walked out. Dashboard still open, still live, still counting the gaps no one could spin anymore. I didn't smile. Not exactly. But there was a calm that settled behind my ribs. The kind you don't get from revenge, only from resolution. The kind that comes when a lie finally runs out of room. I sat down, refreshed the sheet. Red, yellow, black. Still a mess. Still broken, but not hidden. Not anymore. I didn't need a title or a badge or an office with a nameplate. I didn't need to argue. The data did the talking. 14 years I held that system together, called average by a man who couldn't even read his own wreckage. But what he saw in that room, that wasn't average. That was everything he refused to understand. Laid out, line by line, color by color.